Episode number 311, Concepts. Book 5, The Awakening of the New King. Kane's eyes grew sharp as he noticed the burst in power from the ocean as Zarak revealed its nature.
I perceive willpower akin to a sun's seed, compact but with the potential to radiate boundless strength, inspiring others in the process.
The sun seed's red flames grew even mightier, but Zarak's smile did not fade.
A river doesn't confine itself to a single form. It embraces transformation, from serene streams to formidable torrents. Our willpower mirrors this evolution, growing through varied circumstances.
The ocean burst with even greater power as it changed its forms, flooding everything around.
A sun's seed, though small, can burgeon into a radiant sun capable of illuminating the world. It's about nurturing potential, not just adapting.
Zarak's face grew solemn as he felt the raw power of the red flames.
A sun radiates light, but a river molds landscapes. True strength lies in adaptation and growth, akin to a river sculpting the earth over time, so our minds should evolve and adapt to the changes around us.
Kane's eyes burst with an even mightier red light as he counted Zarak's words.
A river transforms its surroundings, but a sun seed's light has the power to metamorphose minds and hearts, igniting change within ourselves and others. Our will should evolve according to our own desires, not the ones forced upon us by the world.
Now it was time for Zarak's eyes to burst with power.
A river perseveres through challenges, shaping itself to overcome obstacles. That's the essence of strength, evolving and enduring through time. A sun might be powerful, but it is distant, its figure in the far distance, incapable of truly affecting the world as the ocean does. What is the point of all that power if you remain aloof from everything?
The mighty ocean continued to surge, growing stronger and stronger as it pushed back the red flames. It was evident that the path of the ocean had the potential to rise higher and higher. Kane saw how the waves pushed against him, but then a smile appeared as the red light in his eyes burst with power. We do not understand the sun of this world, so I decide to make my own according to my wishes, like a source of power that can act on the world right now and grow like my willpower does, free of any shackles.
Kane's words made the sun seed burst with power and push back the ocean like a force that knew no boundaries. Zarak's eyes widened as he stared at the bursting sun and saw how it pushed his ocean back. A sense of loss appeared in his face as he felt the sun's power overcoming him, but then his eyes gained a flash of enlightenment. The ocean that was about to succumb burst with strength as it pushed the fire back, and that was far from everything as the sky above the duo began to change. Thunderstorms began to manifest, but these differed from those generated due to the duo's unleashing of their ego waves. Kane's gaze fixed on the sky, and his eyes narrowed as he saw the storm clouds and how multicolored flames were within them instead of lightning. Shock and awe appeared in Kane's eyes as he stared toward Zarak. He knew what that storm meant, and that if Zarak were to break through it, his willpower would reach a whole new level, rising beyond the limits of the apotheosis realm into the divine ascension rank. Zarak saw how the flame clouds in the sky began to grow, soon reaching nearly 10 kilometers, but he forced his willpower to hide, erasing its essence, making the storm clouds slowly fade away. Kane saw that and frowned. There was immense danger when facing those flames, but he had seen Zarak's willpower and knew this one could take it. Zarak saw that and showed a small smile before shaking his head.
12 kilometers is too little. I will keep tempering my willpower to strengthen the flame's power. It will be dangerous, but if I rise, my battle power will obtain not just a quantity improvement, but also an evolution in nature.
Kane saw the determination in Zarak's eyes and had to admit that this one was very fierce. He slowly nodded before making his willpower return.
Thanks for this. Your insights were of great help. I also benefited.
Kane and Zarak nodded to each other as they rose from the ground. They looked around and saw that the trees around them were either burnt to flames or crushed under the devastating pressure of the ocean waves.
Are you ready to march into the capital?
Kane's eyes were sharp as he nodded. 2 months had passed since he returned to the Imperial Lightning Fort, and his strength had also greatly increased over this short period of time. He did not aim to advance too fast in his cultivation, since he was still at the early wave champion stage. Kane did not take shortcuts during his cultivation in the wave warrior rank, nor would he do so in the wave champion rank. He was proceeding with extreme focus on his foundation while examining blood rebirth. He had already nearly reached his blood energy saturation point, and it wouldn't be long before his blood runes evolved into a blood core. As for Blood Hand, Cain clenched his fist, and it transformed into Blood Claws before beginning to thrive. He had already evolved his Blood Hand to the ultimate level, Blood Shockwave. Unlike Sonic Boom, which used shockwaves to enhance the strength of the punch, the shockwave unleashed by that attack happened inside the target, making every punch deal destructive internal damage. Cain found it hard to believe, but his talent in the techniques of the Blood Sea had evolved superbly for some reason, as if he had obtained a new lineage. Zarak saw the power of Cain and nodded.
You have become very powerful, but still, be careful. The politics of the capital are not easy to navigate, and you could face all sorts of problems. You are a rising star, and everybody knows about your accomplishments, so I am sure the princes and princesses of the capital and the noble families will be looking to obtain gains from you.
Cain's eyes narrowed as he heard that and nodded. His only goal was to go through the ceremony and make the Lorifer name echo across the empire for his father. He was not interested in those schemes, but just because he was not interested, that did not mean he would not get mixed into them.
Since you will be there for around 6 months, you should take advantage to see, explore, and use its functions. There are many places that can be of use, like the Tower of Concepts and Laws and Stars.
When he heard the term concept, Cain's eyes narrowed.
I have reached the realm of mind over wave, allowing my willpower to interact with the concepts, but I am still slightly confused about them. They are similar to the laws, but their nature is very different.
Zarak nodded and adopted a solemn expression as he once again unleashed his willpower, but this time there was something different. His river began to vibrate with a new power. He focused on one of the burned areas, and as his willpower covered it, things changed and Cain could see the tree healing.
The laws are the matrix of the universe, the order of things. They are the basis upon which the world works. Thanks to them, heat burns and water cools down. Concepts are different. They are not born from the universe, but our collective thought. Our minds are able to affect the world, as you can see by the effect of our willpower in our surroundings. Concepts are molded by sentient life forms' ideas and beliefs, and that defines their power. The concept of fire makes things burn, just like the law, but as it evolves, its power changes. For humans, fire is not just destruction. It is also the power of life and the core of civilization. As you can see, my willpower has gained insight into the concept of life, granting my ego wave the power to have a bursting healing force. You can begin to feel them, but harnessing their force is much more complex. Do not be hasty. Keep improving your willpower, and they will come in due time. Your alter ego will slowly gain power and interact with them. I would like to help you, but my insights on the concept of life are too shallow yet, so I am afraid I cannot be of assistance. You could use your time in the capital to find a way. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 312, Biomtal Herculean Technique. Book 5, The Awakening of the New King. Cain's eyes grew sharp as he focused on Zarak's words, making sure to engrave the essence of the concepts in his mind. That was a power that rivaled the laws, but that even an astral rebirth cultivator like him could master.
I will be leaving now. Until next time, Master.
Cain clasped his hands, bowed toward Zarak, and nodded at Oliver and Abin before rising into the sky and flashing back toward the Imperial Lightning Fort. Oliver and Abin bowed toward Cain's departing figure before closing on Zarak.
Young Lord has grown tremendously in such a short period of time. That is right. Less than 3 years ago, he needed my help to take care of a few wave warriors, and now he has risen to the point that he can face wave kings alone.
Abin and Oliver were full of admiration and awe toward Cain.
That brat is an absolute genius, but he tends to wreak havoc wherever he goes. I wonder what kind of problems he will generate in the capital.
Zarak almost laughed at the idea of Cain causing trouble in the capital. He simply shook his head and looked into the distance as blue light flooded his eyes.
I will be leaving for a few months at the least and a few years at most. I intend to refine my willpower before ascending to the third realm. Make sure to contact me only if it is an urgent matter. You have my authority to handle my wealth and use my name as you see fit.
Zarak gave a small badge to Abin and Oliver before rising into the sky and departing, heading to the north of the Gaia continent. Kane's presence began to fade as he approached the Imperial Lightning Fought. His mastery over the Void State had reached a high enough level that he could hide his presence from weak Wave Kings as long as they were not looking at him. With the threat of the Blood King, Kane had to be careful wherever he went. Traveling to the capital would be long since the distance between the collapsing Lightning Sector and the Prometheus Sector was immense. It would have been easier to travel 1,000 times across the old world to its sun than to cover that distance. Kane was not a coward, but that did not mean he would go around giving chances for the Blood King to kill him. Not to mention that his presence in a Star Cruiser would also put everybody else in it in danger, so it was better if no one knew. Other than the collapsing Lightning Duke and Luther, no one knew how he would get to the capital and when he would do it. Silently, Kane got into a Star Cruiser and entered the captain's chambers. This Star Cruiser held a tremendous amount of wealth that would be sent to the capital. While space rings could hold all kinds of weapons and treasures, there was a limit to the energy levels they could endure. Most of the products here lacked refinement and radiated a massive amount of toxic energy, so they could not fit into standard space rings. There was a chance of using a unique space ring to store those toxic materials, but that would destabilize the artifact. This approach was better regarding safety, efficiency, and cost. Other than Kane, there was no one on this Star Cruiser. Average Wave champions could not endure the radiation, and Wave Kings would not waste their time piloting a ship when the machine could do it on its own. Kane's eyes narrowed as he perceived the radiation that spread across the ship, and his eyes glowed with red light as he took control over the life wave, generating a shield around him that acted as a filter. After taking care of the radiation, Kane took a deep breath and began to drive the life wave into his body using his willpower. Simultaneously, he consumed several mid-quality wave crystals and blood orbs. This external energy infusion wasn't the extent of his preparations. He also transferred numerous King Beast's corpses into his Devourer dimension, aiming to flood his body with energy and vitality. Most of these corpses had come as part of the rewards accompanying his new military title of Colonel. With his energy intake managed, Kane delved into his cultivation routine. Every bone in his hands and feet had been reforged, so it was now time to address his forearms and tibia. This transformation wouldn't just enhance his strength and speed, it would turn his extremities into formidable shields. In addition to his cultivation base, Kane was deeply engrossed in refining his blood refinement art. He had already reached the pinnacle of Blood Hand, and over the past few months, his blood runes had progressed at a staggering pace. Following the events in the Blood Sea, Kane's talent in the blood refinement art had grown immensely. Not only could he create blood runes at an astonishing speed, but the ones he crafted were smaller and denser than usual, allowing him to accommodate more of them and increasing the amount of blood energy within his body. Kane was content with his newfound talent, but his curiosity lingered. No matter how much he investigated, even with the assistance of the Absolute Life Form system, he found no answers. 2 days after the Star Cruiser departed from the Imperial Lightning Fought, Kane's eyes widened as a sharp gleam lit them up. Kane smiled as he felt his body could no longer hold more blood runes. He counted them, and the number reached an astounding 999. According to the Saint Technique blood refinement art, individuals with exceptional talent in this technique and a robust constitution could typically reach 300, while superb masters and absolute geniuses might attain 600. There was no mention of anyone achieving 999. The first time Kane had glimpsed the formation of the blood car, it had overwhelmed him with its power and bewildered him with its complexity. He had understood nothing of it. But now, the formation seemed incredibly simple, as if he had always known it. Kane ceased circulating his sonic blade fusion technique, focusing exclusively on the blood refinement art. His eyes blazed with red light as he concentrated on every single blood rune within his heart, carefully merging them. The blood runes blended one by one, creating a remarkable synergy between them. It took Kane a grueling 14 hours and the energy and vitality of over 3 King Beasts to merge all the blood runes. However, this was merely the beginning. It was time to give the blood runes chain form, transforming that amalgamation into the blood car. The colossal chain began to interweave, fusing, and gradually metamorphosing into something else entirely. With each passing second, the demand for vitality and energy surged. but Cain had it covered by drawing from the wave crystals and blood orbs in his hands, along with the supply from the gluttony module. Cain pushed his mind to its limits and nearly blacked out from the extreme pressure and mental fatigue. However, after 29 grueling hours, he opened his eyes again, and a burst of blood energy emanated from him as his body grew stronger. Inside his heart now resided a crimson sphere composed of 999 blood runes, emitting a potent radiation coursing through every blood vessel in Cain's body, infusing him with immense strength.
System, scan me.
Cain did not lose his time and immediately ordered the system to scan his body to see how much he had grown. Like always, the absolute life form system obeyed the command without delay. Scanning vessel. Scan of vessel completed. Name, Cain Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, astral rebirth early wave champion. Lineage, Avernus lineage. Wave talent, low tier 8, low tier 8. Stats. Strength, 27.6. Agility, 17.2. Vitality, 26.7. Wave, 19.9. Blood energy, 34.6. Blood rebirth, blue blood state. Note, wave virus inside vessel, enhanced wave talent by 22.1%. No one would believe that someone who entered the early wave champion rank less than 4 months ago would have stats like that. Other than his agility, Cain's stats were all in the level of middle wave champion despite being far from reaching the limit of the early level. As for his blood energy, that had already evolved to the point of matching the late wave champion level. Cain clenched his fists, and a fierce smile appeared on his face. He was sure that if he were to face Zima again, he would have achieved victory even without the help of the flow. What excited him most was that his body could handle the pressure of training in the Biomtal Herculean technique. A body capable of evolving your body to point it can take point-blank strikes of a wave king without any form of augmentation. Who would not want that? The amount of metals needed to train the Biomtal Herculean technique was outrageous. Luckily for Cain, he was inside a ship full of them. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 313, Bandits. Cain found himself submerged within an immense cauldron filled with seething blood, its temperature soaring high enough to melt the massive amount of metal suspended within it. A typical wave champion would have their flesh scorched within minutes, yet Cain bore not a single wound. The Biomtal Herculean technique's training involved altering one's blood's chemical composition, replacing iron with another element. The process began at the bronze infusion level. Initially, at the bronze infusion stage, the practitioner commences the transformation by consciously introducing bronzy elements into their bloodstream. This initiation typically hinges on an advanced mastery over their blood and their rebirth blood stage. Following this is the intricate biological interaction, where bronze elements gradually assimilate into the practitioner's bloodstream, engaging with their biology at a cellular level. This initial fusion of bronze enriches the practitioner's physical endurance, fortifying their muscles and rendering them more resilient against physical stresses and impacts. Upon reaching the pinnacle of this initial level, the practitioner starts to develop fundamental blood skills. These include temporarily fortifying their muscles, rendering them more resistant to harm, and the ability to transmute their blood to form a thin protective barrier over minor injuries, which expedites the healing process. A person with great talent would typically require a week to complete this level, while superb geniuses might manage it in just a day or two. Astonishingly, Cain progressed from the beginning to the end of the bronze infusion level in a mere 4 hours. His approach was meticulous. He did not rush or undertake the technique half-heartedly. Instead, he dedicated time to mastering it while consuming as many bronze-level metals as possible. Bronze infusion did not enhance Cain's constitution, given that it was already at a superb level for a wave champion. Nevertheless, it was a prerequisite for advancing to the second level, silver integration. The metals suspended within the blood were all silver-level metal used in the creation of silver artifacts, the same grade of armor that he currently wore. Silva integration was vastly more intricate than bronze infusion, as the transformations in the practitioner's blood advanced from the cellular to the molecular stage. The process began by deepening the fusion of the biomtal within the blood, emphasizing Silva-like properties. This integration of Silva attributes into their biology further heightened the practitioner's endurance, providing them with a body capable of enduring severe conditions and withstanding more formidable blows. Subsequently, the blood skills evolved, incorporating the solidification of the blood into a flexible, metallic layer beneath the skin. It reinforced their defenses and laid the foundation for more advanced techniques. It took Kane 2 months to reach this level, and he was making significant strides toward the limits of the second stage of the biomtal infusion technique. His progress was staggering, but even with his extraordinary talent, he could not simply transition to the golden resilience level. To enter the third level, a cultivator first needed to elevate his blood rebirth stage to the peak golden blood stage. Attempting to infuse golden level metal into his bloodstream before this point would result in toxicity and severe harm. Kane currently employed embryonic breathing to heighten his body and mind's functionality, thus accelerating his cultivation speed and allowing for multiple trains of thought. He wasn't exclusively practicing the biomtal Herculean technique, but also advancing his overall cultivation. His objective was to attain the middle wave champion rank before arriving in the capital in a month. Despite his state and ego wave's sole focus on enhancing his body's wave control, Kane was not letting his guard down. It wasn't like someone as vigilant as him to neglect security, especially with the threat in the shadows with the name of Blood King. Warning. The AI chip module connected to the Star Cruiser sent a signal that jolted Kane awake. A Star Cruiser was a massive warship designed for high-speed travel in the ether, equipped with protective force fields to counter potential threats. Given the perils of the ether, it should have been able to swiftly neutralize any incoming dangers. However, an unusual turn of events unfolded as the ship suddenly decelerated, and even more perplexing, a minor breach appeared in its force field. Following this breach, a group of 10 individuals entered the Star Cruiser through the hole in its force field, manifesting on its surface.
We don't have much time. Find the metal and take it with us. Remember, do not take the golden level metals and above, only those at the silver and bronze grade.
A middle-aged man bearing a sword on his back issued these instructions to the 9 wave champions, who acknowledged his command with nods before proceeding deeper into the Star Cruiser. Within an astonishingly brief 5 seconds, the group reached their destination, clearly displaying an in-depth understanding of the cruiser's layout and resource distribution. However, bewilderment and concern surfaced on their faces when they discovered that nearly a third of the bronze-level metals were missing, and over half of the silver-level metals had suffered the same fate.
Captain, this is less than the amount reported. Was the information flawed?
One of the peak wave champions inquired of the middle-aged man, a hulking figure with an axe on his back. The individual referred to as Captain furrowed his brows upon hearing the question and observing the cruise's condition. The data they had acquired, along with their access codes, had not come easily, but it appeared that something had gone amiss. Despite everything, he wasn't willing to risk going for the golden-level metals. The Imperial Lightning Fleet might overlook low-level metals going missing from their inventories from time to time. Of course, they would investigate, but it was far from a priority. However, everything changed when it went to the rank resources meant for Wave King, and any shortage of armor would undermine their combat capabilities. The collapsing Lightning Duke and the authorities in the capital wouldn't tolerate such negligence. After a brief moment to assess the situation, the captain issued an order.
Take all the bronze and silver level metals and let's go.
The middle-aged man had an unsettling feeling, prompting this command. He sensed that something was amiss, and although there would likely be issues upon their return, his instincts were telling him that this place was not safe. The wave champions nodded and were preparing to act when it occurred. A crimson force field surged from the Star Cruiser's bow, rapidly engulfing the entire ship within seconds. The captain and the wave champions found themselves submerged in it, and as they felt its power, fear and dread overcame them. Each of them had already attained the first realm of the ego eternal path of power, allowing them to perceive the magnitude of that willpower. It filled their hearts with despair.
Clumpy. Clumpy.
Footsteps echoed through the Star Cruiser, and it didn't take long for the middle-aged man and the other wave champions to spot a figure. A young man wearing a red robe moved gracefully through the ship. His eyes emitted a crimson light as he fixed his gaze on the middle-aged man and the bandits. However, encountering such a young man did nothing to alleviate the bandits' fears. With each step, they could sense the overwhelming pressure of his willpower, and the only word that came to mind was
Monster.
people fear the unknown, and right now, this young man was an enigma. How could someone so evidently young possess such monstrous willpower? In the face of paralyzing fear, people typically react in one of three ways: freeze, flee, or lash out. The burly man with the axe chose the third option.
Oh,
With a roar, his muscles bulged, and his astral wave surged. His power rose to the limit of the wave champion rank.
don't do it.
The captain attempted to intervene, but it was too late. The bulging man had already leaped forward, channeling all his strength into his axe as he swung it toward the young man. As the axe hurtled toward his chest, the young man's eyes narrowed. He didn't budge an inch, opting to trigger his wave cloak without bothering to unleash wave burst or employ his armor.
Boom.
An explosion reverberated throughout the Star Cruiser, leaving the bandits in a state of shock and disbelief. They all witnessed the heavily muscled astral cultivator swing his axe with full force at the young man's exposed torso, yet the outcome was beyond their comprehension.
It's impossible.
The burly astral cultivator could only utter that word as he observed a tiny stream of blue blood seeping from the young man's chest. The axe had barely managed to make a 2-centimeter cut. The young man glanced at his chest wound before gently placing his hand on the bulging bandit's chest. He then turned his gaze toward the others before speaking.
Sonic cannon. Boom.
In the next moment, a massive cavity appeared in the bulging astral cultivator's chest, sealing his fate. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 314, Defeating the Bandits. The bandits' leader bore the name Crane, a middle wave king who had survived numerous dangers while living in the underworld. But never before had he felt so close to death as when he laid eyes on the young man who had effortlessly killed the burly astral wave cultivators with a single touch. Black hair, red force field, not older than 20. It's. Crane's eyes widened as realization dawned upon him, and he uttered 2 words.
Kane Lorifer.
The rest of the bandits shared the same shocked expression when they heard Kane's name. His reputation had spread far and wide across the Empire after the events in Blood Sea, but it resonated most deeply in the underworld. He was the young man who had thwarted the plans of a dark king and survived. Kane's eyebrows twitched as he noticed how easily the bandits recognized him, but he didn't let that distract him. None of them would be leaving this place alive. Crane observed how Kane's killing intent surged, causing him to clench his fists. He had heard rumors about how the young man managed to face early wave kings, but someone at the middle stage was much stronger. Unfortunately for the middle-aged man, his condition was special, and his power had severe limitations, so he did not dare to grow confident. Crane assessed the situation and quickly realized that escaping was possible for him, but the same couldn't be said for the rest of his comrades. Doubt momentarily flickered in Crane's eyes, but then a memory flashed through his mind. Silver light burst from his eyes at that instant as he unleashed his energy.
Run now.
Those words surprised wave champions, and they were not alone since the behavior of the middle-aged bandit also shocked Kane. Crane drew his sword and generated streams of wind and metal elements that combined into a tornado engulfing his body. This tornado spun at a shocking speed and possessed a sharpness that could reduce buildings to rubble. Despite their initial shock at Crane's selfless behavior, the bandits wasted no time turning around and preparing to flee. Unfortunately for them, they wouldn't be so fortunate.
Freeze.
This single word reached their minds, but what truly mattered was the overwhelming willpower behind it. Hypnotizing a wave champion at the first realm wasn't easy, but their fear upon seeing the gruesome death of the burly astral wave cultivator had already weakened their defenses. As a result, all 8 of them froze in place, unable to escape.
A 4-star Grand Hypnosis Master.
Crane was stunned to see Kane use hypnosis to neutralize 8 wave champions with a single command.
Damn it.
Crane exclaimed as he channeled his essence wave into his sword, forming a cyclone of energy before unleashing it toward Kane. The attack was immensely powerful, enhanced by the power of the wind and metal laws. Kane had no intention of taking the attack head-on. Even if his biomtal Herculean technique were at the 3rd level, the power of an attack of a middle wave king backed by the wind and metal laws would be unwise. A sharp gleam appeared in his eyes as he observed the massive tornado approaching. Suddenly, his hands transformed into blood claws, and he lunged forward. The tornado was not only powerful and fast, but also unpredictable, capable of changing direction at any moment, much like the wind. Nevertheless, Kane skillfully maneuvered around it, dodging its fury as he closed the distance to Crane. A flash of shock crossed the middle-aged bandit's face before it twisted into a look of murderous intent. He had refrained from exerting his full power earlier, as he had no intention of killing Kane. Taking a supreme genius's life would mark his own end, since the Imperial Lightning Fought would not rest until killing him. However, he now realized that containing himself was pointless and might lead to him dying right now. The power emanating from his sword grew denser as he swung it, unleashing a barrage of sharp wind metal blades attacking from every angle. Kane's eyes narrowed as he encountered these attacks, which were not only more potent, but also challenging to predict due to their irregular rhythm affecting the ability of the flow.
Boom. Thumpy.
A shockwave radiated from beneath his feet as the power of his heart surged, reddening his skin. Kane evaded several blades and used his blood claws to shatter the remaining ones. He continued to close the distance to the middle-aged man, but it proved to be a challenging task. Crane was undeniably strong, and his battle experience was exceptional. However, what baffled Kane was the fact that Crane wasn't using Wave Burst, which significantly limited the power and speed of his attacks. Kane was preparing to leap into action when his eyes narrowed, as he witnessed the shattered fragments of the wind metal blades on the ground beginning to merge. They generated a massive net that rose from the earth and started to close in on him. Escaping would become a formidable challenge if the wind metal net enveloped him completely. Moreover, he would need to contend with Crane and the remaining bandits simultaneously. The hypnosis he had placed on the wave champions was weak and could easily be broken if their willpower surged.
HMPH.
Kane sneered and placed both palms on the surface of the encroaching net before making the astral wave on his hand burst.
Sonic Cannon.
A powerful burst of sonic force erupted from his palms as the net drew closer, causing it to tremble before shattering. Crane was taken aback by Kane's keen battlefield awareness. He couldn't comprehend how the young man had pinpointed the weak point in his spell so quickly, but he didn't have time to ponder it. Kane had already surged toward him at nearly hypersonic speed. Crane observed the incoming attack and swiftly transformed his sword into streams of metallic particles that formed a semi-transparent barrier around him. Not only was it formidable, but it could also deflect projectiles. Kane's eyes turned frigid as he infused his right claw with the darkness force using the power of his Avernus lineage, while at the same time channeling his astral wave into his arm.
BOOMMMMs.
Upon the collision of their forces, a massive shockwave ensued. However, it didn't emanate from the claw itself, but from the semi-transparent shield enveloping Crane. The 5th level of the blood hand, blood shockwave, left a small amount of blood energy on anything it touched, enabling it to burst like a shockwave. It was incredibly potent, and while its effect was less pronounced within a living being, it still inflicted significant damage. Crane's eyes widened as he witnessed his protective barrier shatter. The next moment, he felt a kick slam into his chest, nearly fracturing his ribs before sending him hurtling through the air. Kane's eyes narrowed as he saw Crane crash into one of the walls. The red light in his eyes intensified as he prepared to launch forward. However, shock overcame him as he sensed the eruption of Crane's essence wave.
Ironstrom Cyclone Nova.
Crane shouted those words just before his essence wave exploded, unleashing a swirling nova of metallic shards and cutting winds, forming an expanding devastation sphere, consuming everything in its path. Cain couldn't evade the attack in time, so he reinforced his astral wave on his arms and the front of his body. He used his arms to shield his head and channeled his blood energy at full power to enhance his biomtal Herculean technique.
Boom. Boom.
Numerous containers were shattered to pieces by the cyclone's power, and Cain found himself trapped inside, crashing against everything in its path. Crane watched as his attack successfully sent the young man hurtling away. However, before he could become too pleased with himself, a crippling pain assaulted him. He grabbed his lower abdomen and coughed up blood. It took him a moment to regain his breath, but he managed to stand up and look into the distance, seeing Cain's body buried beneath a pile of broken artifacts. There was no sign of killing intent in his eyes as he turned toward the rest of his team.
Let's go.
The Middle Wave King did not want to kill Cain, and the only thought on his mind right now was to escape this place. Crane's team initially brimmed with joy upon hearing those words, but suddenly, their elation turned into dread. The next thing they witnessed was a shadowy figure materializing behind Crane, striking him with immense power.
Boom.
The shockwave burst inside Crane's body, causing him to cough up even more blood before being propelled against a metal pillar, leaving a deep indentation. Cain's body was covered in deep wounds, some reaching the bone. However, there was already a thin layer of coagulated blood energy that accelerated the healing process. His body was more durable than some silver-grade artifacts, and he had pushed his astral wave and blood energy to the limit, yet that single attack left him in that sorry condition. Had this man displayed the full power of his cultivation, things would have been much harder. Cain thought this before turning toward the Wave champions, who had lost all signs of battle will.
Lose consciousness.
That was all it took for all of them to pass out. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 315, A New Assistant. Crane opened his eyes the next second and found himself in a chair. Immediately, his mind jolted, but before he could take a step, he realized that he couldn't control his body and his essence wave wasn't circulating correctly. Fear gripped his heart as he thought that his spine had been shattered.
I've blocked the flow of your energy and blood. Your limbs will regain their functionality in a matter of hours.
Cain spoke with a calm voice as he stood in front of the man. He had managed to hinder Crane's movement by using Vessel Strike, the lost skill of Blood Flow Fury. He had yet to master it to the point of effectively using it in combat, but against an unconscious enemy, it wasn't that hard.
What do you want?
Crane's eyes glowed with silver light as he used his willpower to regain control over his emotions. Cain didn't seem like the sadistic type, and since the young man had woken him up to talk, there might be a chance to keep his life. Cain nodded as he saw the calmness in the man's voice before speaking.
Full name and nicknames.
The man stared at Cain for a moment before speaking.
Crane Savior, Silver Gale.
Cain was a little surprised by how easily he got the information. Crane noticed that, and his eyes narrowed for a moment before explaining.
I have no reason to lie. You could have easily gotten that information from my men since you're able to hypnotize them.
Cain nodded before accessing the military interface. He could access much more information with his current rank as colonel, and soon found Crane's name.
A reward of 2 million military credits, not bad.
Crane only sneered as he heard the reward for his head, but did not comment about it.
Why did you attack this star cruiser?
Once again, the middle-aged man did not hide it, and immediately answered the question.
I got information about a star cruiser with a large amount of wealth moving through this region, which was supposed to be empty. It was an easy job, and one I have done many times before.
Cain nodded, and his eyes grew cold this time as he asked the following question.
Who sold you the access codes and the information about the star cruiser?
The roots of the star cruiser were supposed to be a military secret, and since the group was able to make a hole inside the force field, it was clear they had access codes. This time, Crane didn't answer immediately and instead asked his own question.
What do you plan to do with me and the rest of my men?
Kane's eyes narrowed. He was sure that Crane was the only one who knew about the inside man, and the middle-aged man would not talk before knowing what kind of fate awaited him. After a moment, Kane nodded and honestly answered the middle-aged man's question.
I will interrogate each of you. As long as you are not a group of deranged killers or something like that, I will just hand you over to the authorities. I am not fond of killing people who can no longer fight back.
Crane stared at Kane and could see the honesty in the young man's eyes.
A man in the Imperial Chamber of Commerce in the capital. He constantly gave us the intel, told us what we could take, and we gave him a percentage. Then he just reported it as missing and put the blame on the other side. No one really cares as long as the quantities aren't high enough.
Kane softly nodded. This ship was supposed to be empty, and his presence was an anomaly, so it made sense for it to be the target of a heist.
Who do you work for?
Kane had learned about the underworld in the past few months from intelligence reports he bought from the Egon family. He knew any criminal group or organization with a Wave King had to pledge allegiance to one of the 10 Dark Kings.
I work for the Golden King.
Kane relaxed when he heard that. Among the Dark Kings were all kinds of figures, one of which was the Golden King. In contrast to the other kings who asked for all sorts of tasks and initiation rituals for their members, the Golden King only cared about wealth. As long as you gave him his cut, the Golden King would hand over protection, and you could work under his umbrella. Of all the kings, he was the second most mysterious, behind the Shadow King, and he was also the one with the most relaxed relationship with the organization. Unlike the other Dark Kings that had wreaked havoc across the Empire more than once, the Golden King usually stayed silent and did not bother others. Kane then stared at the middle-aged man for a moment before finally asking another question.
How did you end up in the underworld, and why did you stay behind to protect the rest of the bandits?
Crane's eyes narrowed, and a flash of rage appeared as he remembered a few images of his past. After a few moments, a silver light appeared in his eyes as he calmed down.
I was part of the Sundering Sky Rock University a long time ago. I and several others accompanied the principal's son on an incursion into the Atlas continent. We were supposed to go on a rescue mission, but the true goal was to steal some treasure from the dark races.
Crane made a small pause at this point as the rage in his heart burst. Clearly, the memory of that time was something that greatly disturbed his mind and soul.
The principal's son took the treasure, but the dark races discovered our presence. The piece of shit ran away, leaving us behind. Most of my friends died, and while I managed to escape, I took a dire wound to my evolution core. According to the university's rules and codes, I should have been compensated, but they refused to acknowledge the mission and said I went alone so they wouldn't have to help me.
Kane's eyes narrowed, and he stared at Crane. While he didn't blindly believe the middle-aged man, the story made sense. The wealth needed to heal the evolution core of a middle-wave king was immense, and there was no way the university would take that cost, especially if the man resented the principal's family for his actions.
I see, still that doesn't explain why you are wanted.
Crane showed a chilling smile as he answered that question.
Since they did not want to pay me, I took it. I loathed their treasury, taking several high-level cultivation resources, and in the process, killed a few guards that refused to comply.
Kane stared at the man for a few moments and nodded. It was evident now that the reason Crane remained behind to protect the rest of the bandits was the psychological impact of being abandoned in the past. He then focused on Crane's lower abdomen as the AI chip module began to act, target scanned. Read exclusive adventures at FreeWebNovel. Name, Crane Savior. Race, Godslayer Humankind. Path of Power, Essence Evolution Middle Wave King. Lineage, Wave Talent, Limit Tier 7. Stats: Strength 21.9. Agility 36.2. Vitality 31.2. Wave 79.1. Note, target's evolution core is damaged. There are cracks in it. Currently stabilized, but using wave burst or high energy output reopens the wounds. Kane's eyes narrowed before commanding the system to generate a visual representation in his mind. He saw how the evolution core of Crane was already crystallized, full of immense energy. He also saw the cracks on it. Some were old, but there were new ones as well. The cauterized ones should have been the old ones that Crane managed to stabilize with the stolen cultivation resources. The newer ones should be the backlash of the technique that nearly defeated Cain. A light appeared in his eyes as he considered a few things before speaking with the system. Ways to heal it. Calculating. Vessel is unable to heal a Wave King's evolution core, but Sun Seed's radiance of life current power should be able to stabilize the wounds. Cain was slightly surprised that the radiance of life could heal a sacred organ, but he didn't waste time before putting his hand on Crane's abdomen, right above the evolution core.
Do not resist.
Crane was surprised, and the next thing he saw was a shining golden flame that emerged from Cain's hand as it reached his abdomen. Before he could realize what was happening, his pain faded as he felt the cracks on his evolution core begin to close. Cain smiled as he saw the power of his Sun Seed's radiant of life. Although it was much weaker than Zarak's alter ego's healing power, it was still a great force.
Wise.
Crane was grateful, but also confused as to why Cain would help him.
I need an assistant who knows the ways of nobility and the Empire's capital, and you seem fine. I will help you stabilize your wounds, and in the future, when my strength grows, I might heal you entirely if you do well.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 316, Reaching the Prometheus Sector. Crane was shocked by that proposition, and for a second, he could not believe what he just heard.
I am a criminal, and I am a colonel of the Imperial Army. I have the authority to take criminals under my wing as I see fit.
Cain was talking about the ability of high-ranking military officers to take convicted criminals out of prison. Specific criteria needed to be met, and any new criminal activity done by the convict would affect the officer's military record, so not many people would take that risk. Still, Cain was confident in his ability to control Crane.
Even if that is true, the Sundering Sky Rock University will not be happy.
Continue your journey with Freeweb Novel. Cain laughed as he heard that. He had killed Dominic and indirectly caused the death of a Wave King and severe wounds on an Apotheosis Realm cultivator belonging to the Sundering Sky Rock University. The hate the universe had for him was much greater than the one they had for Crane.
There is no need to worry about that. That university could not possibly hate me more. Are you willing to accept?
Crane remained silent for a moment before turning toward the unconscious Wave champions.
What about my men?
A small smile appeared on Cain's face when he heard that. Crane's loyalty and sense of camaraderie were why he chose the man for this task.
I will interrogate them. Originally, I was going to send all of them to prison. If you take the job, I could release those who had not taken innocent lives.
Crane stared at Cain and knew there was no way to negotiate. He either took the job, or all of them went to prison. The category of innocence was different for different people, but by the young man's reaction to his story, Crane was able to deduce the way Cain's mind worked. Murdering civilians and those too weak to defend themselves was something he would not tolerate, but he could approach deaths that occurred in fights among powerful people with a pragmatic point of view.
I accept.
Cain focused on Crane, and a solemn light appeared in his eyes as his ego wave burst with power. Crane knew the next part and took a deep breath as he lowered his defenses. Cain put his hand over the man's head before sending his ego wave in. He was not trying to reach the middle-aged man's soul, since that was too dangerous. Instead, Cain sent a fragment of his ego wave and left an ego mark on Crane's ego eternal matrix. That was the same mark Zarak had put on his body the first time they met, allowing the man to know his location, but Cain's approach was much more restrictive. Only he could remove the mark and could make it explode if he wanted. While the explosion of an ego mark had little to no strength, if it were to happen inside your ego eternal matrix, just falling into a coma would be lucky. Once Cain finished with that and was sure he could keep Crane under control, he turned his eyes to the rest of the bandits and began the interrogations. Of the 8, Cain chose to release 3 and sent 4 to prison. As for the last one, that woman made Cain's killing intent explode. Even Crane, who had been willing to risk his life for the woman to escape, felt utter disgust by the woman's confession. Crane would gladly end the woman's life if Cain did not kill her. Cain's eyes glowed, allowing the woman to regain consciousness, only for her to see his hand piercing her chest. The last moments of her life were pure agony as Cain slowly drained her blood. After consuming the last drop of blood and ending her life, Cain sent the cops into his devourer dimension before slowing down the Star Cruiser, sending the three bandits out. As for where they would go and what they would do, it would be up to them to decide, but if they crossed paths again, he would not be so merciful. The other four remained unconscious. These bandits' crimes were not so severe that Cain could not resist the urge to kill them, but they did deserve to go to prison.
Order this mess and keep an eye on them. I don't want surprises.
Crane bowed toward Cain before waving his hand, generating streams of wind that began to move the mess and collect the materials. Cain returned to the room and submerged his body into the boiling cauldron. He first healed his body before returning to his cultivation. Just as the Star Cruiser entered the Prometheus sector, the astral wave inside him burst. Other than a bursting astral wave, Cain also felt how his blood began to burn. The enhancement of the astral blood beast, the tempering of his biofusion Hercules technique, and the enhancement of his body refinement allowed Cain to push his blood rebirth to the next level. In the blue blood stage, Cain refined and strengthened his white blood cells, increasing their ability to fight off infections and diseases. This stage was characterized by increased resistance to poisons and toxins, as well as the ability to repel negative and toxic energies left inside your body. Now, Cain was evolving to the golden blood stage, focusing on refining and strengthening his plasma, the liquid component of his blood. This stage was characterized by increased energy flow and heightened sensitivity to the life wave in his surroundings. However, the most critical factor was that someone at the golden blood stage could use his blood cells as reservoirs for astral wave. That not only meant an increase in their energy pool, but from now on, his blood would gradually enhance every muscle fiber, bone tissue, and inner organ. There was tons of blood inside the cauldron, but all of it was being devoured at a staggering speed by Cain's body as his blood evolved, and the reforging of the bones on his extremities was completed. Cain clenched his teeth as he pushed his astral wave with more and more strength, using the power of his breakthrough to drive his rebirth blood higher and higher. Just reaching the golden blood stage was not the end, since there was a long way to the peak of the level, and an even larger one to achieve the mercury blood stage. Cain's eyes burst with red light as he endured the searing pain while feeling his blood burning and carrying on. Every second was agonizing, but he did not lose focus until the evolution was completed.
Boom.
A burst of astral wave emerged from Cain's body, making cracks appear in the cauldron. A feeling of overwhelming strength filled his body, as his arms and legs were now stronger than any silver wave artifact. Cain opened his eyes as his astral wave burst, and he saw not even a drop of blood left in the cauldron. His body had already consumed everything. A smile appeared on Cain's face as he closed his eyes and examined the state of his skeleton. Now that he had finished reforging the bones on his arms and legs, it was time to reconstruct his ribs, collarbones, and every other bone in his chest and skull. The next part of his skeletal reforge was a much larger process, since it did not just involve the creation of new joints, but the complete fusion of some bones and the formation of new ones. By the time Cain reached the peak of the Wave Champion rank, his skeleton would not resemble anything like a normal human.
System, scan me.
Cain wanted an exact measurement of his current power, and the Absolute Life Form system answered immediately. Scanning vessel. Scan of vessel completed. Name, Cain Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, astral rebirth middle wave champion. Lineage, Avernus lineage. Wave talent, low tier 8 middle tier 8. Stats. Strength 33.1. Agility 22.1. Vitality 40.1. Wave 23.5. Blood energy 39.6. Blood rebirth, golden blood state. Note, wave virus inside vessel, enhanced wave talent by 22.1%. Cain's stats were simply overwhelming. He had just entered the middle stage, and his body was more potent than most late wave champions, not to mention that his vitality was simply off the charts thanks to the Biomental Herculean technique. One must also not neglect the overwhelming secondary energy pool. Kane's blood energy was shockingly high, and it was clear that his blood car was evolving at a staggering speed, one that not even the greatest geniuses of the Blood Sea could match. Just in time, Kane's eyes narrowed as he felt the Star Cruiser descending and moving slower, as it seemed it was finally reaching its pot. He stood up, and his invisible ego wave had already flooded the place. His eyes narrowed since he recognized someone. Good, I can take care of that problem now. Kane stood up and collected the cauldron in his space ring before walking out. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 317, Change of Plan. Unlike other sectors, where there was a variety of organizations in control, such as the case of the Collapsing Lightning sector, having the Collapsing Lightning Duke, and organizations like the Blood Sea and Sky Sundering Rock University, every inch of the Prometheus sector was under the control of the Imperial Cot. The Imperial Cot of the Godslayer Humankind Empire was a massive organization with hundreds of thousands of individuals. Although it might sound like a lot, it was a force whose purpose was to monitor the political and military power of the entire Gaia continent, whose population surpassed 1 trillion. Even those at the lower echelon of the Imperial Cot had great influence in the Empire, especially within the boundaries of the Prometheus sector, where the Imperial power was at the highest level. Near the border of the Prometheus sector, there was a massive pot where hundreds of star cruisers from all over the Empire arrived and left during the day. The amount of wealth that moved through this location in a single day was more than what the Blood Sea could generate in an entire month, and this was one of hundreds of pots spread across the sector. A young man stood in the pot, and his eyes focused on a star cruiser from the Collapsing Lightning sector. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, and wore a golden robe with the words,
Chamber of Commerce.
on the back.
That is the star cruiser from the Imperial Lightning Fort sent by the Collapsing Lightning Duke. We have more than enough people to do the inventory ourselves. There is no need for someone of such high status as Treasurer Marcus to waste his time with this.
A bald old man with a black beard stood beside the young man. Despite his old age, he was a wave king, and his aura was immensely powerful.
Guardian Creamer, I am in charge of this Imperial port, and there is no task too small for me.
Marcus' voice was serene as he uttered those words and stared at the star cruiser with a smile. Creamer's eyes narrowed as he glanced at the young man, but he did not open his mouth again. It was clear to him that something suspicious was going on, but he was unwilling to antagonize someone as influential as the young man, so the best path was to remain silent. It did not take long for the star cruiser to descend, and it automatically opened its cargo doors, allowing access to Marcus and Creamer. However, just as the duo was about to move into the star cruiser, they saw 2 red eyes emerge from the shadows. Creamer immediately jumped forward, positioning himself between Marcus and those red eyes. The cruiser should have been empty, but that was not the case. Marcus was also surprised by those red eyes, but what really bothered him was not the unknown presence inside the Imperial Lightning Fort star cruiser, but what he saw next. Kane emerged through the cargo door, and he was not alone since Crane and 4 bandits followed him. His eyes immediately fell on Marcus since he was the inside man in the Imperial Chamber of Commerce who sold his star cruiser's codes. Kane expected Marcus to lose control upon seeing Crane, but other than surprise, the young man showed nothing on his face. Interesting, his battle power and talent do not seem surprising, but I can detect a powerful willpower. He is not someone simple. There was no love in Kane's heart for the one who sold the information about the Imperial Lightning Fort star cruises, but he did not have tangible proof of Marcus' criminal activity. Crane was able to deduce it from their interactions and business deals, but that would not be enough to convict someone, much less a member of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce. Kane expected to make Marcus lose control by walking out with the bandits, and from there, slowly break the young man's spirit. But it did not seem it would be so easy.
Who are you?
Creamer shouted as he unleashed his essence wave. showing early Wave King's vibrant power as his bow materialized.
HMPH.
The one that sneered was not Cain, but Crane. The middle Wave King took a step forward, triggering his wave cloak.
A mere port guardian dares to question a colonel of the Imperial Army.
Krima was surprised by Crane's cultivation, and the shock only grew stronger as he realized that the young man with red eyes was actually a colonel. Suspicions arose in Krima's mind as he focused on Cain. While there was no doubt that Cain's aura was formidable, he was too young. However, the old man did not dare to make a move. Just as Krima wondered what he should do, a voice emerged from behind.
It is a pleasure to meet the King's Slayer, Cain Lorifer. My name is Marcus Ignes, Treasurer of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce.
Marcus clasped his hand and performed a deep bow toward Cain. Krima's eyes widened as he heard that, and after a moment, he remembered Cain's name and the saga of the Blood Sea. People still talked about the young men, not over 17, who managed to survive a full-power attack of a Titan before engaging Wave Kings.
Please excuse my outburst. I have not recognized Colonel Lorifer. This old man is Krima Justia.
Even if he was a Wave King, Krima knew his status was nothing compared to the young genius before him, so he immediately clasped his hands and lowered his head. Cain's eyes narrowed as he saw the reaction of the duo. He did not care about Krima, but it seemed that taking care of Marcus would not be so easy. Marcus could feel Cain's eyes, and the pressure of a late Wave King's willpower was not easy to handle, but he was able to keep his composure. Enjoy exclusive chapters from Freeweb Novel.
I must apologize for this lousy reception, but we had no idea Colonel Lorifer would be arriving today in our port. I boarded this star cruiser without telling anyone, so there is no need to worry about that. However, you could help me with something.
Cain glanced at the far Wave champions, and these began to move, positioning themselves next to Krima.
They are bandits that attempted to steal the resources stored in the star cruiser. I already interrogated them and uploaded their confessions to the military network. Take them to jail for their sentence.
Krima was surprised, and while he did not feel threatened by a group of Wave champions, he did not think it was wise to let them walk freely. However, as he concentrated on their eyes and noticed the lack of focus, a new wave of shock assaulted his heart.
They are hypnotized.
Marcus' eyes widened as he heard Krima's shout and turned toward the Wave champions. He clenched his fists and took a deep breath as he calmed his heart and glanced back at Cain.
I must thank you, Colonel Lorifer. There had been a wave of robbery in star cruisers coming from the Imperial Lightning Fort. Luckily, there had never been any death before, and I am sure they will not happen again.
Cain's eyes narrowed as he heard Marcus' words and detected the hidden message.
The fact that new crimes will not happen doesn't mean we can just ignore the old ones.
Marcus grew solemn as he heard that since it was clear that Cain would not simply ignore the previous transgressions, even if no people had died before. He considered things for a moment before speaking again.
For such detailed information about the star cruisers coming from the collapsing lightning sector to be revealed, there must be more than one person working in the shadows. Some just want to gather wealth, but others might want to harm the Imperial Lightning Fort.
Crane understood the silent exchange between the duo, but did not really care about it. As for Krima, he was looking away as if he could not hear the discussion between Marcus and Cain. Cain's eyes grew sharp as he heard that last part. Marcus hinted that he was not the only one targeting the star cruisers from the Imperial Lightning Fort, and while he was doing it for wealth, others sought to undermine the collapsing Lightning Duke. Cain began to reconsider things, since it seemed he had stepped on something greater than just a simple heist.
Are you sure the leaked information had harmed no soldier? Yes, I am 100% sure that all the information that reached this port led to only stolen wealth and no deaths.
Marcus immediately answered Cain's question. He was able to relax since it seemed there was a way out for him. Cain's eyes burst with red light as he increased the pressure on Marcus, but this one stood firm. After a moment, his ego wave vanished and he nodded.
Let's talk in private. I want to know more about these figures in the shadows.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 318, Into the Forest. It didn't take long for Cain, Crane, and Marcus to reach an empty room, and as soon as they did, Cain's eyes began to glow with red light. Marcus took a deep breath as blue light flooded his eyes. His willpower had reached the pseudo-wave king rank, allowing him to keep a cool head, but there was no way he could compete with Cain.
The information reached me through encrypted messages. I got a long list of targets, along with their routes and codes. Many of them were not just full of wealth, but also soldiers. They asked for nothing in return, making it clear that money was not an issue to them. I was careful and only targeted the empty cruisers and used people who knew how to handle themselves, or at least that's what I thought.
Marcus's eyes were cold as he glanced at Crane, but the middle-aged man just shrugged his shoulders. There was no real relationship between them other than mercenary work, and any notion of loyalty between the two would be ridiculous. Cain's eyes narrowed as he heard those words and saw that Marcus was being cautious even now, revealing the information in a way that, out of context, had no meaning and could not be used against him. His interest in Marcus waned since he wanted to find out the people behind the scheme targeting the Imperial Lightning Fort. They were cautious, going through several layers of protection and not risking contacting the bandits and mercenaries directly.
Since when did this message arrive, and do you have any clue who is behind it?
Marcus did not answer immediately, as he didn't want to antagonize Cain, but neither did he want to get on the wrong side of the secret organization that dared to target the collapsing Lightning Duke. Cain could discern the thoughts crossing through Marcus' mind.
They might be dangerous and have much more power than me, but they are not here.
Cain's eyes grew cold as he uttered those words, and his hand transformed into a demonic blood claw. Marcus was shocked to see how fast Cain turned to violence, and he could feel the palpable killing intent emanating from him. They were in the pot and under surveillance, so everybody would know if something were to happen to him, but it seemed that Cain didn't really care about it. He wouldn't dare. That thought crossed Marcus's mind, but he immediately shook his head. The image of the young man attacking a Titan was still clear in his mind. Compared to that, killing him was nothing.
I have all the information filed. I can send it to you.
Marcus sighed as he accepted his fate. He could do nothing about it and understood that he bit off more than he could chew.
Do not send it to me directly. Send it to Crane.
Marcus and Crane were confused when they heard that. It was clear that Cain had complete access to all the information, so adding an extra step seemed unnecessary, but things soon became clear.
Crane, you will read all the information and write a new report, as if the information was something you gathered on your own. The force targeting the Imperial Lightning Fort contacted you directly, and there was no middleman between you two.
Marcus's eyes widened, and a smile appeared on his face. If Crane were to make a completely new file and send it to Cain, things would not be traced back to him. He was just about to express his gratitude when Cain spoke again.
Keep using the information, but only target empty cruisers. I don't care about the wealth you obtain, but from now on, you will be my eyes and ears in the Imperial Commerce Chamber.
Before Marcus could answer that command, Cain vanished from sight, and the next thing he felt was a hand grabbing the back of his head. A sharp pain assaulted him as a red rune was engraved beneath his hair. That was none other than an ego mark, allowing Cain to always know Marcus's location.
Betray me or neglect your duty, and I will send you to prison. If I lack evidence to convict you, I will silently kill you.
Marcus trembled as he heard those words. Cain managed to vanish from his sight despite being right in front of him, and now he was mocked. While the ego mark was not indestructible and could only do minor damage to the upper layer of his body, to break it, he would need the assistance of an Apotheosis Realm Master. As a treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce, Marcus knew people at that level, but none would erase Cain's ego mark and risk enraging such a genius on his behalf. The young man nearly fell to the ground, finding himself in an extremely dangerous position with no way out. Cain did not really care about Marcus's thoughts and walked away with Crane. Actions had consequences, and if the young treasurer had not sought to steal from the Imperial Lightning Fort, he would not have found himself in that predicament. Although an Imperial pot was a fortified place full of powerful people, Cain and Crane could walk freely, and it only took them a moment to reach the gates.
Commander Luther. Colonel Lorifer.
Luther's voice emerged from Cain's "Aye." chip module, and there was confusion as the bald man did not understand the reason for the call. Before leaving the pot, Kane contacted Luther, handing over all the information he got from Marcus and explaining the events that went on inside the Star Cruiser. He also made sure to explain how some resources were
destroyed.
During the fight, Kane originally planned to pay for the resources he consumed, but there was no reason to waste his money if he could put the blame on the bandits. Besides, they would have lost much more if it hadn't been for his intervention. Luther could figure out that Kane kept some of the wealth, but upon seeing that the young man touched nothing of the gold level and above, he did not care. That was especially true since the information about the force behind their recent problem with their shipments was now available.
Thanks for the help. I will make sure to record this service. Any more information will be of great help. I will assist in what I can.
After that, the conversation ended, and Kane soon left the pot. No one dared to stop the duo, and all the gates opened with Kane's military authorization. Once they were out, a massive forest appeared in front of them, extending as far as the eye could see. It was full of large trees and powerful presences hidden in it.
This is the cicada forest. According to my knowledge, there are powerful king beasts and all sorts of interesting places in it.
Kane's destination was the Godslayer humankind empire's capital, Eden. There was a long way to go from the periphery of the Prometheus sector, but he was fine with it. Although he was now a powerhouse, he had always wanted to visit the Prometheus sector and gaze at its wonders, so he would take the chance. Besides, the first of the 3 rites of his arcane nobility ceremony would take place in a month. Kane and Crane rose thousands of meters into the sky before flashing at supersonic speed forward. The middle-aged man had visited the Prometheus continent before, so this was nothing new for him, but Kane's eyes were filled with excitement as he gazed at the majestic trees, waterfalls, and mountains.
Roar.
Suddenly, a mighty roar drew the duo's attention, and they looked down, only to see a massive crocodile-like king beast roaring at them, its life wave bursting. The king beast stood inside a frozen river full of killing intent as it detected the duo's presence and roared to warn them against getting closer. Unfortunately for the iceberg crocodile, the roar only made Kane's killing intent explode. The young man's astral wave burst, as did his blood energy, and he fell from the sky.
BOOMMMs.
A massive shockwave echoed across the forest as Kane reached hypersonic speed before lunging toward the iceberg crocodile. Soon, a bloody battle started, but it didn't take long for a winner to become evident. Crane's eyes narrowed as he felt Kane's power, and it was clear that the young man didn't win their battle due to luck. His eyes were sharp as he paid attention to the surroundings, making sure no enemies attacked from the shadows. Kane didn't take long to win the battle, consuming every drop of blood from the king beast before sending its corpse into his devourer dimension. Kane's body had some minor wounds that were already healing. The power of his body was overwhelming, and it took a lot of strength to make a superficial wound, much less leave a crippling injury. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 319, Azure Royal Family. For the next week, Kane spent his days traveling across the cicada forest. He faced several king beasts, taking their blood in order to improve his blood core while at the same time enhancing his techniques and honing his combat skills. It was excellent training, allowing him to refine his combat abilities and adapt to his cultivation and skills. Blood Hand is good, and its power should help me all the way to the peak of the Wave Champion level, but I should seek another technique in the capital. For defense, the Biomtal Herculean body will help me even if I were to become a Titan, so there is no way to improve in that aspect. Sonic Dash is still sufficient regarding my speed, and my Sonic Blade fusion technique will serve me well until the Apotheosis realm, so there is no issue with that. As he formulated his plans, Kane and Crane finally reached a city. It was enormous, though smaller than the Imperial Lightning Fort. It lacked a Titan tower or any similar structure, but featured a massive castle beneath a mountain. Kane immediately recognized this place as one of the 81 states. The imperial family was vast, not just due to the descendants of the emperor, but also because it included the family of the former emperors. Unlike the Old World, the title of Emperor of Humankind was not inherited by birthright. It was a rule established by the first Titan and Emperor of the Godslayer Humankind before his voyage into the Astral Sea. Once an emperor grew too powerful for Ether, a grand battle would commence among the Godslayer Humankind's mightiest warriors until one emerged as the victor. That individual would then assume the role of emperor, and his family would become the imperial family. Out of respect for former emperors, the previous imperial family retained their possessions and gained the title of royal family. They moved from the capital's Ka to one of the 81 states, where they would take control of the land and manage their wealth. Of course, not all 81 states were governed by previous imperial families, since the current emperor was only the 8th emperor of the Godslayer Humankind. The others were under the control of various forces, primarily from the imperial court, but they also included the sons and daughters of sector dukes and other high-ranking nobles. Regardless of one's perspective, the Prometheus sector teemed with promising figures, all eager to ascend to greater heights.
This should be the Azure state, under the control of the royal family of the Azure Emperor, the 6th Emperor of the Godslayer Humankind.
Cain nodded at Crane's words. A glint appeared in his eyes as he heard the name Azure Emperor. That man had been a formidable warrior, capable of immense power, but his legacy was tainted by the unruly behavior of his descendants and the persistent chaos they sowed. After the departure of the Azure Emperor, they encountered numerous challenges but remained influential. It was best to steer clear of them. Cain had no interest in the Azure royal family, so it posed no problem. His gaze settled on a hotel, and he proceeded with Crane. They encountered no hindrance when passing through the city gates, courtesy of Cain's rank, and it wasn't long before they arrived at their temporary lodging. After a whole week of fighting and flying, and with much more ahead before they reached the capital, a night of restful sleep sounded appealing to the duo. Cain reached the lobby and secured 2 rooms for himself and Crane. It was costly, but that was of no concern to him. The night passed without incident, and the rest worked wonders for Cain. However, it didn't take long for matters to become troublesome. Cain and Crane left the hotel in the morning, but before they could get far, they saw a commotion on the road and observed a group of people walking toward them. This group was composed of young individuals with vibrant bloodlines coursing through their veins. It was evident that all of them were young, less than 20 years old, and none had a cultivation level below the wave champion rank. At the forefront was a young man with blue hair and golden eyes, accompanied by a woman with similar characteristics. Cain glanced at Crane and noticed him subtly nodding, indicating the group were indeed royals. He wanted to continue on their way, but ignoring the group could lead to various problems, so it was better to hear what they said before politely declining. It didn't take long for the group to arrive in front of Cain, but they remained silent and instead wore frowns on their faces. Cain immediately understood the meaning behind their frowns, and he couldn't help but silently curse. Are they serious? It was clear that the group expected Cain to greet them as if they were doing him a favor by gracing him with their presence. While he wasn't narcissistic, there was a certain level of pride in Cain's demeanor, given his exceptional talent. Ah, what a nuisance. Cain let out a silent sigh before clapping his hands together and nodding. That was the best gesture the duo would get from him. Crane, on the other hand, performed a slight bow. Discover hidden tales at Freeweb novel. Even after these gestures, the duo continued to frown, showing a lack of friendliness. However, they didn't waste any more time and began to speak, their tone now devoid of any goodwill.
Cain Lorifer, the Azure Third Prince, invites you to a feast. You should come at 9 past noon. There will be people of great importance whom you will want to meet.
Although it sounded like an invitation, the way the duo addressed Cain suggested that he should be grateful and thank them for their kindness.
Please convey my thanks to the Azure Third Prince, but I will be leaving the Azure state today to travel to Eden.
Surprise registered on the duo's faces, as they seemingly hadn't considered for a moment that Cain might be so audacious as to decline their invitation. In the next moment, a cold gleam appeared in their eyes.
I'll allow you some time to reconsider your answer. The Azure Third Prince has shown kindness by inviting a commoner into his home, yet you are refusing it.
Cain's eyes turned cold, and he no longer cared about the duo. He was willing to play along with their game to avoid trouble, but he would never lower his head to someone he didn't respect. Without saying a word, Cain and Crane moved to the side and continued walking forward, ignoring the group. There was no point in wasting his breath on any of them.
You dare.
The young man's eyes fled with rage as he witnessed Cain's behavior and extended his arm to grab the back of Cain's neck. Despite having seen the recording of the Blood Sea battle and knowing of Cain's strength, he didn't care. In his mind, the opponent's strength didn't matter because no one would dare to harm a member of the Azure royal family. Unfortunately, the young man made a grave mistake since, for the first time in his life, he encountered someone who didn't care about his background. Before he could even touch Cain, a silver blur appeared, and the next thing he saw was his arm lying on the ground.
Oh,
A scream of pain reverberated through the city as the young man immediately fell to the ground, blood oozing from his amputated limb. Crane's eyes were cold as he stared at the young man and calmly sheathed his sword. Cain didn't even bother to glance at the middle-aged man, since this one was just fulfilling his duty.
you lowly commoner, dare to attack us.
The young woman with azure hair shouted and immediately stepped back while the god moved forward. There were 5 of them, all wave kings. However, they were all old at the early stage, so their power was far from impressive. Cain glanced at the woman and couldn't help but shake his head. He was a supreme genius and had the battle strength to call himself a powerhouse, but there were still people who dared to speak to him in such a disrespectful manner. Soon, his eyes turned cold as he looked at the wave kings.
I am a colonel of the Imperial Army. An attack against me is considered an act of treason.
Cain's eyes burst with red light, and the old wave kings were immediately paralyzed. None of them dared to take a step forward. While their duty as gods for the Azure royal family was important, they could feel a great power emanating from the young man. Additionally, the strength of Crane alone was enough to handle them. Even more important was the fact that even though Cain lacked a noble title, he held the position of colonel in the Imperial Army. That rank was no less prestigious than a marquis, a title that even the 3rd prince of the Azure family could only match. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 320, Damien Skyflame. The young woman saw how the god did not follow her command, and her rage exploded. Years of being treated as superior and doing whatever she wanted had twisted her personality into one of extreme narcissism. Even if the target was much stronger than her, in her mind, no one should dare to resist them.
I told you all to apprehend him.
The woman had just shouted when Cain appeared in front of her, and the next second, he slapped her with so much force that her teeth were sent flying before her head crashed into the ground. She nearly lost consciousness, and immense pain assaulted her, but it did not erase the hatred in her eyes. Cain's eyes flashed with killing intent as he felt that gaze, and the muscles in his right leg grew tense as he was ready to stomp her chest, crippling her. He would not have a problem justifying his actions, but just as he was about to act, his eyes narrowed, and he looked into the sky. Crane followed his gaze but detected no one, leaving him wondering what was happening.
HMPH, consider yourself lucky.
Cain said nothing else before turning around and leaving with Crane. He was annoyed by the inconvenience and the fact that, no matter how strong he grew, there were still people stupid enough to think their background allowed them to look down on him. As Cain and Crane departed, a figure materialized in the sky. It was an old woman with azure hair, and there was a sharp light in her eyes as she focused on Cain.
What a monster. So young and still able to detect my presence, even though I should have been perfectly hidden from his ego wave.
After that, the woman turned to the bloody dew on the ground, and nothing appeared in her eyes but disdain and disappointment. She did not care about the trash of the new generation, but could not allow people to go around and simply kill them, as it would affect the name of the Azure royal family. Luckily for Cain, no one else bothered them, and they could leave the Azure state in a few minutes by flashing across the state. Once they were out, they found themselves within the cicada forest again. Cain and Crane had a choice. They could either take the regular route, moving through empty trails to the next royal states, or cross straight through the heart of the cicada forest toward Eden. While Cain would have liked to take the second path to avoid the inconveniences, it was not so simple. The cicada forest's periphery was safe for someone of his power, but deep inside, far from the range of influence of the royal state, there were great king beasts whose power matched that of Apotheosis realm masters. Cain was not so arrogant as to think he could face those beasts, even with Crane's help, so he chose the safe path, heading to the next state. This one was also controlled by a royal family, the one belonging to the fifth emperor, the Skyflame Emperor. During their trip, Cain fought some king beasts until he reached the city. However, this time, a group was waiting for him at the entrance before he could enter. Immediately, Cain frowned, as he did not want another set of problems, but there was not much he could do, and he simply walked forward. However, from the beginning, things were very different from their encounter with the Azure Royals. The group had a young woman and a middle-aged man, and while there was an inherent aura of nobility and arrogance, they kept calm expressions as they saw Cain's arrival. When they finally saw Cain arrive, the duo clasped their hands and took a short bow before the middle-aged man spoke.
We greet Colonel Lawfare. Allow me to introduce ourselves. I am Silan Skyflame.
Cain's eyes narrowed as he felt the calm nature of the middle-aged man, and this time he returned the courtesy, clasping his hands and performing a polite bow along with Crane. The young woman remained silent, but Cain did not overthink it.
We come in the name of the second Skyflame Prince to invite you to his home for dinner and an important dialogue. I assure you that there is no better place to rest than our royal castle.
Cain glanced at the duo, and after a moment, he nodded. He would consider talking to them if the other party was cordial. Besides, he was curious about what type of topic a royal prince wanted to discuss with him. It didn't take long for Cain and Crane to reach the outer layer of the massive castle. It was built on top of an enormous active volcano. Even at the foot of the volcano, the temperature was incredibly high, so much that even weak wave warriors could not stand it, and it only grew as they advanced. Discover stories with Freeweb novel. Despite that, Cain saw many people calmly walking through the area. It didn't take long to understand that all these people were part of the Skyflame royal family, and their bloodline granted them heat resistance. However, Cain was surprised to see people with the bloodline of a former emperor of the Godslayer doing mundane tasks like taking care of the area around them. Silas noticed that, and a complicated smile appeared on his face.
Our ancestor, the great Skyflame Emperor, had a large harem, and due to our bloodline's tendency toward fertility, it was not hard for him to generate over 1,000 children, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Over 100,000 children with the Skyflame lineage were sired in just 2 generations.
Cain was slightly surprised to hear that and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had already started an intimate relationship with Shura, but was far from being ready to have a son, much less 1,000 of them. Since the number of the Skyflame royal family members was so massive, it made sense for those with little strength and talent to live a mundane life. He didn't really care or have an opinion about that, and continued walking. Silas glanced at Cain, and his eyes could not help but narrow as he noticed how easily Cain managed the heat. The Skyflame state had one of the hottest volcanoes in the entire Prometheus sector, and even those with the Skyflame lineage found it hard to reach the volcano's peak. Cain noticed the man's eyes, but didn't care. He was actually more intrigued by the sight of the young woman by the side of this one. She had not said a word since they met and kept looking at him with intense eyes. Finally, the group reached the volcano's peak and entered the castle. As soon as they did, the heat that permeated the outside faded, but that didn't mean the energy was gone. On the contrary. Cain and Crane immediately noticed the waves of liquid fire permeating the ceiling. All the heat from the outside had condensed there, and its destructive power was formidable. The duo didn't stare at the ceiling for long since a man immediately went toward them. The man seemed to be in his 20s, with short black hair and blue eyes. His nearly 2-meter-tall body was not overly muscular, but it was clear there was an immense strength inside it. Cain's eyes immediately narrowed as he saw the number 2 engraved on his blue robe's shoulder. For royal families, the titles of prince and princess were not given by their connection with the former emperor, since their direct descendants were thousands of years old. Those titles were granted by the higher-ups in the family to the younger generation members who had proven enough talent, and those with numbers like first, second, and third were among the best of the group.
You came. It is a pleasure to meet the young legend in the flesh.
The young man stood before Cain, and extended his hand with a cordial smile.
I am the second Skyflame Prince, Damien Skyflame.
Cain stared at Damien and returned the courtesy. As soon as their hands touched, he perceived the strength of the second Skyflame Prince, and despite being an essence wave cultivation, it was impressive. Damien's smile remained, but there was inner shock inside his heart. He had seen the Battle of the Blood Sea, but Cain's strength was even greater than he expected. Although deducing all that from a handshake might seem too much, the young man did not reach his position just due to his great power, but also his insight.
Thanks for that, Sealers. You can leave now.
Silas bowed toward Damien before nodding toward Cain and Crane and left quietly. However, the young woman by his side remained. She showed a great smile before walking next to Damien and clasping her hands at Cain.
It might be late, but allow me to introduce myself. I am a princess of the Skyflame royal family, Karin Skyflame.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.